Hello everybody. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to edit an image in On1 Photo RAW. For this tutorial, I'm using On1 Photo RAW 2021. Now, this is a super cool program. I'm assuming that most of you guys that are here watching this video already have the software installed, but if you don't, I've put a link down below as well as a little discount code that you can use to get some money back if you don't have the software. It's a really great software. I like it so much for editing my photos non-destructively. One of my favorite editing programs at the moment right now. So anyways, we're going to be talking about exactly how to edit your photos. I'm going to be showing you guys the different tabs that you're going to be working in, as well as some different effects, as well as some little things you can do to make some local adjustments. So I highly recommend watching this video, pulling up an image of your own alongside, and then pausing and playing, and not necessarily applying the same effects, but trying out the same things and working in the same way that I am in terms of starting with one effect and moving down through the rest. So try it out, see what you guys think, and I really think that this video is going to help you guys edit your photos in On1. So I'm going to open up a photo right now in On1, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So I've got my image open in On1 Photo RAW 2021 right here, as you can see, and I have the image open in the Edit tab. Make sure you're not in Browse, make sure that you are in Edit because you want to edit your image, obviously. So the first thing that you're going to see when you do this is that you will probably be in Levels, and you'll probably be in the Develop tab down here. So you can stay in Levels if you prefer to work with Levels and the histogram. I like to stay in Nav, so that way if I zoom in, I can drag around. And then you can go down here, you can see Develop. We've got regular sliders that you'd have in any other editing software. But the first thing that I like to do here in On1 is to actually click up here where it says Tone and Color and minimize that box. And the first thing that I like to do is lens corrections. So when you're doing lens corrections, you can choose the lens that you have if you want, or you can just manually correct it yourself. If you did want to choose your lens, a lot of times if you click auto, it will select it. My lens is not found though, so I'm going to show you guys how to do it manually. And so you can go ahead and adjust the distortion if there is any in your image. And generally when I'm doing this, I'm not too concerned about how the lens has distorted the image, and I'm more concerned about just making it so that it looks compelling, the most compelling scene that I can. That's looking pretty good. I usually don't have to mess with the color fringe on a high quality lens, and then the fall off you'll also want to change as well, which is basically just affecting the vignetting from the lens on the corners. So just try and make it so that it is about even. Right there looks good. Now that's looking great, so I can go ahead and hide that. You can also go into details and do some sharpening. So I'm going to zoom in here to the tree, and I just clicked Command plus to zoom in. That's Control plus on a PC. And we can go ahead and increase the amount. And you can see when we increase the amount, it gets quite a bit more crunchy. We can also increase the threshold. Now, the really cool thing about the threshold, and I'm going to zoom out when I do this, is that if I hold Alt Option, I can drag this threshold, and whatever is white is going to be sharpened. So at 1, it's actually looking pretty good. It's just going to sharpen that tree, which is pretty much the only thing that I want to be sharpened at this point. And then I'm going to toggle this again, and I can adjust this as needed. So that's looking pretty good. You can already see that that sharpening before we edit it looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and go back. You can hit Command 0 to zoom out, or just go to Fit up here, and now we're back here. I'm going to close the details box and open the tone and color. Now, we are going to adjust the tone and color just like we would on any image, and then we're going to go from there. So when you're adjusting the tone and color, of course, just do it as you watch the image. So I'm not too concerned about what the numbers say. I'm just adjusting each slider until I'm happy with where they're at. This image I feel like is definitely too dark, so I'm going to bring up the exposure. I'm going to bring down the highlights. Maybe I'll bring up the midtones. No, right about there. We're going to add some more contrast. I'm going to bring up the shadows. Right about in there. We're going to bring up the whites, and we're going to bring up the blacks. Now we can add a little bit of structure if we want to make that tree really pop. We don't want to add too much though and make the image too crunchy, but right about there is good. I usually don't adjust the haze down here, so I'm going to leave that as is. Now let's go down and adjust the color. So we have a few options here, just like you would in any other editor. I'm gonna just adjust this to make it as neutral toned as possible. And right now I feel like the image is too blue because I do recall the rocks being a lot more orange. And the one thing that I'm really looking at in this image to balance it is this tree. So I can look at the branches of the tree, which shouldn't be toned blue. They should be pretty much white. That's looking pretty good. And let's go back to fit here. I'm just trying to dial this in perfectly. Okay, that's looking pretty good to me. Now I want to increase the vibrance to just kind of make these rocks pop a little bit and increase the saturation. And now you can see a little bit goes a long ways, and we are already looking a lot better than we were earlier. So let's see the before and the after already. And that is just toggling the, I believe that's a / key. It's right below the delete key. That shows you the before and after. So it's looking really good for us to move on and start adjusting some more things in the image. So after you're done in the develop tab here, the next thing you want to do in On1 is go to the effects tab. Now the effects tab has tons of great effects. When I click add filter, you can see all of the effects here. I'm going to talk about a few of my favorites in this video. The other cool thing to keep in mind is that it's totally non-destructive. So it doesn't matter what order I add these effects. It doesn't matter if I delete one, if I want to go back and adjust one. It's totally non-destructive. So you can always go back. You can always go back to develop. There's never a point in time at which you cannot step back. And so that is what I really find cool about this program. So anyways, the first effect that I want to add here is the sunshine filter. And even though there's not really any sunshine in my scene, I always like adding the sunshine filter because it just really helps me make the image kind of pop. It adds a little bit of contrast, adds a little bit of glow. It does quite a bit for the image. I'm actually going to add a little bit more glow myself. Usually about 5 is good. So I'm actually going to add a little bit more glow myself. Probably about 5 is good. And then we're going to go in. We can adjust a few different things here. I'm not going to touch the saturation, but I may touch the warmth. And I might adjust the amount to be either stronger or not as strong. That's looking pretty good to me. Something right in there. Now the next thing that I want to do is go ahead and create a dynamic contrast. And what this does is it just kind of fine tunes the contrast. It adds a really kind of micro clarity contrast adjustment. So as I'm adjusting these, I'm just looking at the image. And I don't want it to pop too much, but I do just want to add a little bit of dimension to the scene. So I'm just going to slowly drag these back and forth until I have it at a spot that I like. Right about there looks good to me. The tree is really starting to pop now. So that's looking good. Now the next filter that you're probably going to use quite frequently is going to have to deal with colors. So we're going to go back up to add filter and we're going to do a color adjustment. Now I want to show you guys how I would go about adjusting some colors here. So I want to change the colors of this foliage on the tree here. You can actually use their preset to select the foliage, which you see it's already done a really nice job there. And we've increased the saturation quite a bit on those greens. I want to brighten that up. And I just kind of want to make these greens pop a little bit. Now, I don't think they really look realistic right now because they are so green. So I might adjust it slightly back towards yellow to give it a little bit more of a realistic feel. I'm going to increase the range as well. The range is going to allow me to select a wider variety of greens in the image. So you can see that super simple adjustment. It took me probably 45 seconds. Really pops those greens and makes them look really nice on that tree. They are adjusting over here as well. I could use a mask and mask that out if I didn't want it to affect over there. Making a mask in On1 is super simple. I'm just going to click this mask button here. Now we've got a white mask. I'm going to hit B to get my brush tool. And then up here, you've got all your brush settings. I'm going to change my opacity to 100. And I'm going to go down to paint out. That means that we're painting out the effect, so we're painting black. I'm going to reduce the size of my brush here using the opening bracket. And we're just going to paint this out right here. You can see now our mask. We've painted that one small section out, so it's super easy. I'm not going to talk too much about exactly how to use the mask. This tutorial is not designed to show you guys how to use masks, but down the road, I may make another one all centered around masking. So this is starting to look good. Maybe I want to do one more color adjustment here. And I'm going to adjust these oranges in the scene that are all over the place. So we could try and select desert. You can see it does a decent job here. But I actually might want to not use a preset. So I'm going to hit Command Z. The presets are always great, but it is sometimes nice to do it yourself and do it a little differently. So now I can select oranges. You can see that I can really increase saturation of these oranges. I can increase the brightness as well. So I'm going to do that to kind of make this pop a little bit more. And maybe I'm going to increase the range. Now I'm going to decrease the range actually, so it doesn't select any of those yellows and oranges that are in the greens there. And let's slightly change the hue. And I'm just going to bring it a little bit more towards red to kind of complement that green tree a little bit better. Perfect. So you can see it has a lot more contrast with the tree, which is exactly the look that I'm going for. So I'm really liking the way that is working. So the last effect that I'm using all the time is this curves here. Now this works just like a curves in any other program. This is definitely not a new editing tool or anything that's exclusive to On1, but the curve is just really easy to use to add contrast. So what I like to do is just create a little S curve here to kind of add a little bit of contrast. And I might dial down the opacity just a hair because it is a little bit strong for my likings. And now I'm finding that the oranges might be a little bit too saturated, but luckily, because it's all non-destructive, we can just go back down into this color adjustment here, and it was the second one. And we can go into the oranges, and we can reduce the saturation just a little bit. And that's looking much better now. So another thing that you can do with curves, I'm going to create a new curves layer for this, is to go in and you can actually do a luminosity mask just like you could do in Photoshop or a variety of other programs. And now if you're not quite sure what a luminosity mask is, I encourage you to do some extra research after you watch this video and kind of check it out, because I simply just don't have the time in this video to show you guys exactly how to use luminosity masks. It's a huge topic to cover, and it's something that you're going to want to watch like a whole video series on. But if you do know how to use luminosity masks, I'm going to show you guys how to make one here. So you go ahead and hit that button to create the mask, and then you can click Lumen. Now you can click View, and now you have a luminosity mask. I actually want to select these darks down here, so I'm going to hit Invert so that now I have a darks mask. And now I'm going to adjust the levels. And let's actually keep this a little bit lower. Adjust the levels. And again, I want to make just a good selection here of this hole, the lighter spots on the image. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with that. And now I'm going to hit View again to view the image. And now I can adjust. And you can see now it is adjusting just like a regular luminosity mask. And that's looking pretty good to me. Let's toggle that. Nice. So you can see that we've definitely reduced the contrast in the whole image. We've made this hole a little bit brighter here, a little bit easier to see. So that's looking really nice. Now I might want to go back to this original curves layer and just kick in a touch more contrast. So I am darkening it again, but I'm totally okay with that because I've kind of fixed it a little bit so that it's a little bit more balanced. And that's looking pretty good to me. So as I mentioned before, the really cool thing about using On1 is that we can go back and adjust any of these effects at any point in time. So I'm going to go back in. Maybe I want to adjust these oranges and bring it down. After sitting and looking at this image a little bit, I think that I do want to, but I might use another layer mask. So I like what the oranges look like down here, but they're a little strong up here. So I'm going to go ahead and click here to create a layer mask. Going to use B for my brush tool. And I'm going to paint out. I'm going to lower the opacity this time though to about 30%. And I'll increase the size of my brush. And I'm just using this to kind of help even out the image because the oranges over here are definitely a lot more saturated than the oranges on the bottom of the frame. So I'm just doing this to make things a little more even. And right in there is looking really good to me. I might go back through on this other adjustment and affect the greens. Like I said, after I sit here for a few minutes, I kind of get a better feel for the image and if it needs to be adjusted. This one's looking a little bit better. You might want to just make it look a little bit more realistic. I can also go down here and hit adjust saturation and click the eyedropper tool and then click and drag to just make this look more realistic. A lot of people like to have a really greater than good look to their image. I like mine to look a little bit more realistic, so for that reason I'm going to go for that look. So you can see there really simply I've just gone back through, adjusted a few things to make the image look a little bit better in my opinion. And maybe I'll even go back here with my brush tool and touch this up right here. Make that a little less orange. Okay, that's looking really good. So I'm kind of going into the final stages of my image here, and I want to use one more filter. That filter is going to be the vignette filter. It's going to be right here. And now I can go in and create a vignette. Now, they have really nice presets for the vignettes here, and for landscape images, I like to use subtle. And that's going to allow me to create a really subtle yet strong vignette that's going to help enhance my scene quite a bit. So I can go in now and I can increase the feather if I wanted. On this image, I definitely want to increase the feather quite a bit, as well as the roundness. And then I'm going to drag the brightness down a little bit. And maybe we will increase the size. Now that's looking pretty nice. Just like that. And again, I might find that now my oranges are a little too strong. We could go back and make another color adjustment, or we could just create a new color adjustment layer here. So for this one, I think I'm actually just going to use a color enhancer layer here. And I'm just going to go in and reduce the vibrance on the scene as a whole to make it a little more realistic, reduce the saturation. And that is looking pretty good to me. Looking a little bit more realistic now. Maybe I'll lower the opacity just a touch. And that looks good to me. So the last thing that I like to do on an image like this is to actually go to the local tab. Now I'm not doing a whole lot in the local tab on this image, but this is where you would go if you wanted to paint with color, so you wanted to dodge and burn, or you wanted to make any local adjustments to the scene. So in this photo in particular, I think all that I want to do is create a little light circle in the middle of this frame to kind of help bring your attention to the center of the frame. Basically the opposite of a vignette. And so I'm going to go to 1 on the exposure, which is going to brighten. And now you can see that by default in this local tab, when we have an adjustment, the layer mask is completely black. So we need to add some white to it in order to make it so that your effect will show through. So I'm going to hit B here, and then I'm going to click up here. And this right here, this tool here, is called the masking bug, otherwise known to me as the radial or gradient mask. And I'm going to go to shape edges, and then I'm just going to click in the center. Now that is going to create me a nice little, like I said, the opposite of a vignette. So it's affecting the center and not the edges. You can see obviously right now it's much too bright, but we are going to reduce the exposure quite a bit. And we're also going to reduce the size of the circle. I'm dragging this inside circle. Now, if I click and drag on this dotted line on the outside, that increases the feather, which is good because that's going to help me keep this looking realistic. And then I'm just going to bring this down quite a bit. You can see now it's having no effect. So I can actually use the arrow keys if I wanted to go up by just 1, or 0.01, I should say. And usually that's what I'll do until I feel like it's at a spot where it's starting to look obvious what I've done. So you can see I'm at 0.2 right now. I'm going to toggle this. And it's just a really subtle effect on the center of the frame, but I really like what it does to help me bring my viewer's eye into the middle. So that's pretty much the last step I'm taking in any photo I'm editing in On1. You can see that we covered what to do in the develop module, what to do in effects, as well as what to do in local. For landscape images, you don't need to worry about portrait AI. This is for portrait photography, so something that I'm never too worried about. But this is how I edit my images in On1. So hopefully that was really helpful for you guys to see exactly how to edit images here in On1 Photo RAW 2021. All right, everybody, that wraps up how to edit your photos in On1 Photo RAW. I want to thank you guys so much for checking out this week's video. Please make sure that you like and subscribe this video. It really helps me in order to make sure I can keep bringing you guys free videos every week in the future. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys would make sure to subscribe to my channel. I want to thank you guys so much. We're going to be coming out with another video next Saturday, so I look forward to seeing you guys then. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.